thinking of like the fly in your pudding or the bad milk in your tea, but they're very English phrases, and I couldn't think of anything that is more ubiquitous.
That's true. More deliberate things than that pun. Corgi banned away, of course, Kadril, one of his big picks. Now 2 AD carries gone. Tristana likely to get banned by Schalke because... I mean, NIP might ban it as well because they've actually shown they want to play other AD carries other than Tristana. Now, other picks, Thresh was banned. We also had Cassiopeia banned away. One of those is getting through for now. Jarvan likely first pick for NIP when it comes to it.
And both these supports have shown they're really good at the Thresh as well, so it is a possible first pick. The Galio's been very strong across the last couple of days. Cho'Gath Prophet actually showed a very good performance on that as well. Instead, we're going to have Jarvan removed from Shook, which is a wise choice, in my opinion, as Shook has looked good on that Jarvan across the last days of the promotion tournament.
Now, Elise is available. Wasn't really picked up in the last game. We've seen teams trend away from that. Obviously, less Zac priority on 7-16 has dropped off. Interesting. First pick Alistar with Janna available.
Spruffle just wants to prove that he's just as good as Mithy. Looking for that MVP slot next.
Of course, Alistar is viable. Janna is a good counter to it in the lane. Alistar can get out of the lane and look to roam around. Tahm Kench is another pick that at least can do well protecting anybody that Alistar gets, but it's not quite as cut and dry as seeing a good Janna player deny an Alistar.
It is Norscaren's most played support,
yes.
With 9 games now into his 10th. And I think the Elise pick here from Memento makes a lot of sense as well. But instead they're going to look towards the Gragas. Could, of course, go top. Smitty J has had a propensity towards more carry-orientated top laners.
And the reason I'm actually glad not to see the Elise here is Memento played a lot of Elise earlier on in the split where it was a little bit more early game focus for Schalke. Schalke have shown a good ability to teamfight later on into the game. Galio is still available for both teams should they want to pick it up here. And that's why Memento kind of is having this Gragas, because if you were to get Tahm Kench, Gragas, Galio, and then round it out with 2 carries, it would be very similar to the last game.
But NIP might get Alistar, Sejuani, Galio.
Yes,
and that,
which
you've just got these
great.
2 compositions where you're looking at, as an AD carry and you're saying, oh god no, please don't make me have to play into this composition, because that is dive all over.
But the Cassiopeia is there, not so great into specifically the Galio when you look at like he builds magic resist, but every other tank you can kind of just chunk through quite effectively.
Low priority on AD carries thus far for both the 2 teams, and we're getting into the second ban phase. We saw Ashe removed last time, and the Camille, so looks like it's pretty much the same story for both these teams thus far.
Gnar is likely to go here as well. It's too good a blind pick, although we know Schalke would be looking to last pick their top laner.
Will be the Gnar removed. And you're getting to this point now where Phase 2 bans are a little bit more selective. There are those blind pickable top laners that we tend to see banned out, but this second phase of Phase 2, these second 2 bans tend to be a bit more targeted at your opponents.
Yeah, I think we see Renekton here as a ban to come through, deny that blind pickable top laner. Jax is the last champion that was banned that is available and now is not available. Again, NIP not wanting to give Smitty J that counter pick. Ooh, this would be against what they've been drafting for pretty commonly.
However, you do have an AD carry counter to finish it up, give Upset something strong that carries in the late game. I'm thinking Cogmore, I'm thinking Twitch, and you have damage sources throughout the rest of the game with the Cho'Gath and with the Cassiopeia. So it's uncommon for Smitty J, but fits very well into this Schalke composition.
Cogmore would be the big blinking lights one for me against tanks right now. Twitch is decent, but can end up a little bit lower on the damage if you don't get super far ahead. Now the Trundle comes out to try and eat through some of this front line when it comes to resistances. That is a top lane Trundle into Cho'Gath. That is not a support Trundle, as Alistar is already locked in. We don't see a lot of Trundle in Europe being played in the top lane, but other regions, LPL, we've seen it once or twice.
It's definitely still a viable pick, and that Subjugate's so effective against tanks, and when you've got 3 tanks already on the enemy team, it makes a lot of sense. We have seen top lane Alistar in the past, when you used to be able to auto-attack in the middle of his W animation. It was beautiful, but as you say, it's probably going to be taken up towards the top side. And it is Twitch picked up that final pick. I'm not sure why. I was going to say I'm not sure why it's been switched to top lane, but then I realized Schalke immediately locked in their last pick as well. It is the Cogmore for upset.
Yes, Cogmore makes sense against tanks. We have a very interesting AD carry matchup here. Twitch versus Cogmore. Basically, again, another situation where first carry to die will basically lose the fight. Now, there is, of course, a Cassiopeia for Schalke. A little bit different from the Galio they had in the last game, but NIP, I like their options for dealing with tanks. It's a very interesting setup here with the Trundle, with the Twitch.
As we get into the game and once we've actually loaded up Stress, I really want to dive into the depths of that dealing with tanks mechanic in this game because we have so many of them. And sometimes it's hard to work out exactly how both teams are going to be able to actually counteract those tanks. It's a bit like counteracting shields. It can be a little bit muddied in the minutia. Before we get onto the Rift though, make sure you guys are jumping on Twitter. @LOL Esports is the Twitter page you want to look for, and these are the hashtags you want to use. Hashtag NIP win if you think the Ninjas in Pyjamas are going to take it 2-0. Well, they're not, because it's already 1-0 to Schalke 04. Hashtag S04 win if you think Schalke 04 are going to go 2-0 up. It'll be 1-on-1 if the Ninjas in Pyjamas win. Just so that you know, Stress. And so that everyone at home knows as well. It is a best of 5 on 7/16, and it is for a spot in the European LCS.
Turns out, Medic, you're great with words, but you're about at the same level as me when it comes to numbers.
Here is my number story.
Awful.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this game, here's my number story for the day. So we get given sheets with all of the player picks and what they've played in the past and their KDAs and that sort of stuff on before. And it shows the win-loss for a team across the course of the split as well.
Yes, it does.
And it shows me here, NIP, 36 games, 11 wins, right? But the losses, because it's all done on an Excel document, somehow they've been nulled. So it's just a lot of hashes in the box.
Okay.
So I say to our stats guy, I'm like, Connie, there's a mistake on my sheet. Can you tell me how many losses NIP have if they played 36 games and they've got 11 wins? And she, like, very, very seriously says, okay, Medic, I'll look that up for you. Looks it up and says, Medic, it's 25. And in that moment, I realized all I had to do was take away 11 wins from 36 games to do the maths. But Connie, thankfully, did not mock me for my mistake.
And that's 25. That's number one as we head into this game. We'll see if it'll end up being another one. Surely that would be 26 now.
Yes.
If we're doing some fast math. We'll see whether it's 27. Nah, I'm trying. I didn't study engineering for nothing, but being bad at maths.
Like, neither of us are really using our degrees anymore. Schalke 04 are using their heads in this game, though, and we talked about breaking down this tank line. You've got the Cassio, you've got the Cog. We can kind of understand pretty simply how Schalke do that. They just output a lot of damage. How do NIP break through the tank line for Schalke 04?
Well, first of all, NIP, you reduce it with the subjugate, try and get as much of the resistances away from Schalke as you can. Then you can have potentially that Blade of the Ruin King coming through from Hikyu. Prophet will be able to duel those lower health targets just a little bit. It is a little bit more nuanced for NIP, probably a little longer trades than a tank shredding Cog and Cassiopeia would like to have, but certainly options there for both teams.
And I want to see how NIP use Nagne in this mid lane as well. The Galio pick is something we've seen him on a few times across the course of the split. Hasn't always been effective, but has been effective throughout the promotion tournament for any team that's decided to pick it up. If they can get him jumping in those side lanes, if they can get a couple of kills ahead, perhaps on the Twitch, perhaps on the Trundle, those become incredibly oppressive and disruptive matchups for Schalke 04 to have to deal with.
Yeah, especially that Twitch, when you look at good Twitch performances. Team fighting Twitches can even hit like over 1,000 damage per minute just from being able to get the ultimate through the fight. That spray and pray just again and again will go all the way through Schalke if they're not careful, but gotta get later on to that point. Not a very common matchup that we see Cogmore into Twitch in the bottom lane here in Europe specifically, but you can see Schalke already have the early game push trying to get towards that tower.
Spartel has gone for the Ignite in that lane as well, so he wants to be a little bit more aggressive onto Upset, needs to be able to catch him out and make sure the Norskeren is not waiting to devour his AD carry. Shook, you want a ward. Oh, he gets the Blastcone positioning down because that actually dodges a ward if it's placed at the Krugs, which is something we do see some junglers do.
But it doesn't dodge a ward if it's placed at red, unfortunately, and that was what Schalke had done here. Memento, having started on the top side, put that ward down to make sure there was no real way of getting the blast, of having any kind of invade there from Schalke happen. I mean, Schalke safe in the knowledge of where Schalke is.
And Schalke safe in their strengths in the early game as well. Last game, they were able to take a lead early on. Across the course of the Challenger split, they've been able to do the same. And NIP have been matching them across promotion, especially in that gold. Although they don't get many first bloods, they don't get many first towers, they do manage to take a gold lead early on.
This is just yesterday's matches when we look at it. NIP having a very dominant series over Mysterious Monkeys. And although the early game was quite even, around about that 15 to 20 minute mark was when we saw NIP start picking up the pace, start accruing a few more of those leads. Wasn't so much about the early game for them, which is kind of a weird ebb and flow for NIP, really, because the first 5 weeks maybe of the split, kind of grabbing a chunk out and not making this too specific, was very good early game. They had high first blood percentage for Schalke. They had good kills plus assists at 15, but then they kind of adapted their playstyle towards the end of it, made it a bit more about fighting later on. That's the wins that we ended up seeing them eventually take. And that was the real difference for NIP and where they got their wins from. Fixing the later game seemed to work better for them.
And a tank. And you get a tank. And you get a tank.
And you get a tank.
You get a tank.
Well,
and you get a gank in the top lane. And Smitty J has to flash away. Danny Hodge on point, on the money there. 6 tanks in this game. Stress 7 if you count Spartel. 8 if you count Norskeren.
I count them.
It's still actually only 7 if you count Norskeren. Well, my maths.
It's fine. We'll see Cassiopeia build full tank. It'll be okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
If that happens,
not really. We saw AP
you are
Galio,
the king of prediction, Stress. If that happens, I will bow before the prediction.
Bend the knee.
I will bend the knee. You will be the king of the EU LCS Promotion Tournament 2017 Summer Split. It's actually the spring.
Do I get into the LCS? And it's 2018 as well.
It's 2018 again, because that's where we're promoting to. Let's concentrate back on the game, Stress. I've got myself slightly distracted here, and I believe I've taken you on a magical journey with me. At the moment, Smitty J and Memento are pushing up this top lane. Schalke actually, as a team, in the last game, were always pushed up early on. Upset and Norskeren especially. Upset actually was past this midpoint in the lane, almost twice the average for an AD carry in the last game. Almost spent half of the early game pushed up into NIP's side of the map.
And a lot of that is playing the Tristana. You're very safe to do that with the Janna alongside. Of course, you're naturally going to push from the explosive minions when you kill them, so everything will just push towards the tower. This game, a little less safe. He, of course, does have Norskeren to be able to devour him. But if Schalke were to come down unwarded into the bottom lane, it would be okay. But Schalke is having a lot of trouble right now.
Those pesky dragons, man, they're like flies.
Aslan,
flies everywhere, just have to swat them away.
Aslan, not so good against dragons on this one. Not a bore, but at this point, this game is anything but a bore so far. Because, look, Nagne, game 1, fantastic performance coming from the Orianna. Wasn't enough. Sadly, recalls in the middle lane, gets caught by upset. Basically, NIP, through losing EQ and Nagne, lose the game at that point.
The game was already swinging for Schalke.
Yes, it was. That was the final nail in the coffin that Nagne had done so well for the rest of the game to try and actually build for NIP. But a couple of mistakes at the beginning and end of the game really undermined Nagne's game as a whole.
And that's kind of the story of NIP as well. Just a few mistakes here and there that if they removed from their retinue, they would be able to actually win out more of the games. And we saw more of that sort of style yesterday against Mysterious Monkeys. A lot cleaner play, a lot stronger play. NIP trying to get a gank off here in the mid lane. Hiku, of course, with that ambush, can go invisible, but once again, good ward control from Schalke 04. It happened in the last game, it's happened in this one as well. NIP will realize it and clear out some of that vision.
Yeah, and of course now that means Hiku has to go back down to the bottom lane as the CS lead was accruing again for Upset. Upset heavily out-farmed Hiku in the last game. A Flame Horizon in the bottom lane. We had top lane was winning heavily for Smitty J as well when it comes to the farm game. Schalke seem to be the better team when it comes to accruing these earlier leads. I'm not writing NIP off yet, but certainly the laners seem stronger.
And that's such an interesting dynamic because yesterday it was Nagne and Prophet that we said were the stronger laners for NIP. They were the ones winning the game for the Ninjas in Pyjamas. And here perhaps they have just met a slightly tougher opposition than the Mysterious Monkeys.
A lot of it, of course, we have to attribute to lane matchups as well, but I don't know necessarily that actually translates the later you go on in the game.
It does translate to the top lane here, though,
Yes.
because in the last game, Smitty seemed to have the advantage in the Renekton into Cho'Gath. Now, Trundle, who is a little bit of a lane bully, is winning out against Smitty J's Cho'Gath.
Right, and Smitty J in the top lane has had a little bit of emphasis from Shook up there. Now, we've seen this work for NIP.
Smitty J, no flash, of course, as Shook's going in. Here's the hero's entrance as well from NIP. They go for the dive, and they get the first blood. NIP pull the trigger and get a kill.
Very reminiscent play of their series against Giants, where NIP put focus from Shook into Profit in the top lane. They already had Smitty J's flash from the previous gank that had opened a CS advantage for Profit. Now they translate it into a tower, but unfortunately, bottom side, Schalke just a bit quicker on that push. Nagne did get a chance to roam out of lane using that ultimate to make sure NIP could get the early plays with the Galio. Ultimately, Schalke maintained the gold lead from the tower first blood, plus the advantage they still have in bottom side.
What an advantage it is. 30 CS. Memento and Upset are going to look for this Cloud Drake as well, giving the immobile Kog'Maw a little bit more mobility with a Cloud Drake will definitely help them out. Now that the map's opened up a little bit more, you have to think about where NIP are going to put their priority. Do you still keep PQ and Spuddle in the bottom lane? Do you move them up to top? Do you switch around your solo laners a little bit more? Do you bring people into the mid lane? How do you now enact this tank-busting composition?
I think by re-ganking the tank, if you can, on the Smitty J, like, if you can gank him a second time, deny any of his tankiness. Like, right now, okay, he's got a Bramble Vest, he's got Cloth Armor, and he's trying desperately to get some of these feast stacks that'll give him the health to allow the Bramble Vest to have a greater impact. But at 3 stacks, Smitty J still needs a little bit more of a laning phase to really get to that tanky part. That's step 1, is put the enemy tanks behind. Then you're going to steal away their resistances in the skirmishes using this Trundle, and Trundle will just wail away on the side lane. That just means NIP have to be very careful that Profit doesn't over-push and get caught out on the side lane. That's the one thing that'll undermine the rest of this composition.
And Stress, we've talked about the scaling of the compositions. You know, we're looking towards those late game 80 carry duels. We're looking towards having these big team fights later on. But to me, it appears perhaps NIP have a slightly earlier trigger that they can pull. The Twitch comes online a little bit earlier than a Kog'Maw. You've got great CC, you've got a Trundle there as well who can bust through these tanks. NIP seem to have a 20 to 25 minute first spike, whereas Schalke perhaps are looking a little bit later than that.
A little bit later to be at full power, for certain. For NIP right now, though, they are just patiently getting this Twitch a little further towards his first item. It's not like NIP right at this point, as you're saying, are ready yet. They still need a few more minutes to get there. I don't think Schalke will be too bothered by that, because they already got Tower First Blood. Now they're looking towards a Rift Herald for themselves to break a second tower. And despite Hiku having time on his own in the bottom lane, he actually didn't close the CS at all between the two. So NIP still kind of limping along from almost a fractured bottom lane coming out of that laning phase.
And when NIP are limping, Stress, they look towards their mid lane. Nagne yesterday had a very strong performance across the course of his games against the Mysterious Monkeys, and Kadril struggled a little bit at times. KDA, of course, not the best representation as the fight does erupt around this Rift Herald, and NIP steal it away. Not much more going to happen, so let's bring our eyes back towards that mid lane. Interestingly, the damage percentage as well, because these are very big numbers for these two mid laners.
Yeah, massive amount of damage that came from Nagne, and we even saw some damage in the first game. I mean, Nagne had a great series yesterday. Again, a lot of the stats that we're looking at are from yesterday in their 2 most recent series. Kadril had a very back-and-forth scaling matchup, on the other hand, and although he looked good, there were a lot of Galio games that came in there. I think the one that really looked great for Kadril was when they brought him out onto that LeBlanc and just snowballed the early game heavily against Giants. And that made me kind of realize that Kadril, maybe once in a while, give him a good lane matchup. Give him something that can win the lane and can take over the entire game, because it's not just about upset.
This is a discussion we've had so many times, Jess, because you and I were bouncing back before the promotion tournament even started, on who's the better mid laner. Is it Jizuki? Is it Kadril? You fell on the Jizuki side, and you have to give you credit. You know, Jizuki's into the LCS, Kadril's still fighting for his spot. But I think sometimes Schalke draft a little bit more defensively with Kadril and don't go for these carries in the mid lane.
And that's where I think it's been very difficult to place Kadril as a mid laner. he does have some LCS experience from before, but I still don't see him as that LCS talent yet. He's on his way there for certain, and we're seeing some good performances. I want to see that big standout, career-defining performance from him. If there's one series to do it, it will be this one.
Memento gets the flank off here as Hiku opened up the big guns, and now Memento's caught out of position, doesn't get the flash across the wall, gets stunned up, and NIP is wrecking this tank. Memento falls, NIP 2-0 ahead. Remember, they stole the Rift Herald as well, so this might be a mid lane tower.
Yeah, this would be a perfect time to use it, and they do, in fact, spawn it for the mid tower. Upset low on mana, so no real way of using that Void Ooze to lower the minions. Can't really stay in any position.
Norskaren's like, excuse me, Upset. You're not Tristana, you can't jump away. Yeah. I'm going to get you out of this fight.
He's saying, I'm using this to make a decision for you. No way am I letting you get caught by this. Didn't want to have Upset burn his flash. And Schalke just ran out of wave clear at that point. Rift Herald crushes through, not a lot they could do behind that tower. And now Schalke kind of on the back foot. NIP this time are the team that starting to have a little bit better of a strategical early game. They, of course, didn't get first tower, but mid tower being down already is perfect for them to start using this Galio a little bit more. Memento, he was the one starting the fight, gets a great knockback onto Hiku, but the front line from NIP blocks Upset, Norskar, and Kadril from actually getting into the fight. That means NIP very safe with Hiku to take that mid tower.
It was a really poor time to start the fight as well. Everyone was really low mana,
Yeah.
Silly J wasn't there. It felt like Memento said, oh, I've got him, and then didn't realize that the rest of his team couldn't follow up.
And that's the thing, is you can make the great mechanical play, the great engaged looking mechanically, but when you look at the game state as a whole, NIP were already gearing up for an exchange there, where Schalke were a little bit low, as you said, on mana, couldn't really afford to take that fight, but still have good advantages CS-wise, mid and bottom lane. And as much as NIP are making plays on objectives, Schalke are maintaining a close game by out-farming NIP.
Only 1,000 gold the difference between the two teams, and we've seen this story before, Stress. NIP in the last game had a gold lead of about this amount as well and struggled to close it out. Across the course of the split, they've had gold leads and struggled to be able to finish off their opponents. Here, Schalke are in the heyday of their lives, 1-0 up in the series, and they are going to be a tough opponent to finish off.
And this is where I've got to look at the areas that NIP maybe will try and win the game. We kind of mentioned side lane, split push for Prophet. If he does have to come into fights, that's where Trundle is going to start struggling. He can land the pillar, try and section off somebody like Kadril if he can get some autos down, put damage down onto the Cassiopeia, but the difficulty there is you're kind of going in headlong against the Cassiopeia. Can't get a good flank. From there, he needs to kind of create space for Hiku, which is another difficult option. But if NIP can keep Hiku alive and crush through a fight, Prophet will just walk through the backline himself and put damage down, and NIP won't really be too phased.
Maybe a second Cloud Drake as well for Schalke 04. Production there, slightly ahead of when they actually managed to secure the dragon, but they trusted in Schalke's ability to feast it down.
Yeah, no one was really around to stop it there.
You never know, never know. Could have a Karthus ultimate or something come out of the blue.
On the dragon?
That would be really interesting, wouldn't it? If like there was a champion that could do that to neutral objectives instead of being able to do it to champions.
Yeah, I get what you mean. That's kind of what the Smite Summoner spell is
Maybe it's
for.
one of the new keystones, one of the new runes.
Yeah, maybe. I actually haven't looked into that too much.
Yeah,
just because it's a long way in the future. When
and they're all the balance is going to change, and all of the way they work is going to change. PBE is a great testing ground for that sort of thing. And at the moment, Hiku is in a testing ground of his own. 40 CS down in that bottom lane. Has finished the Blade of the Ruined King, but is about half an item behind Upset's Cogmore. And Upset, we talked about tank busting a lot, Stress. He's gone for the Blade of the Ruined King first on this Cogmore, not the Wit's End or the Gwynsues that we sometimes see.
Yeah, because while it is still on hit, probably will end up with a Wit's End a little bit later. He needs that % damage that's going to come through, shred through the tanks, give him that little bit of extra survivability there from the lifesteal that comes through it too. It's basically all building towards taking out Shook, Sprattle, and Prophet later on in the game.
Sprattle is actually really low level here as well. 2 levels behind Norskaren. Hiku's been left a lot of the time in a solo lane, so Sprattle's been soaking up extra XP.
Right, and the other side of that is that Upset and Norskaren have been sat in mid lane for a while now. Kadril has been sat top side. Here's the kind of point where Smitty J's like, I can't go to this turret, guys. He's just going to take it. Can somebody help me out? And the Tahm Kench is the one option for that, but then you're dragging members out of the middle lane, and you give NIP the option to follow with the likes of a Nagne using the ultimate, so NIP can always match the numbers themselves.
And whenever you get into this split push scenario, where it's a 1-3-1 or a 1-4, it's about how you answer your opponents. Because here they've said, okay, we can't answer Prophet directly. Hiku's going to answer with a rat-a-tat-tat of his own. Memento jumps in. Nagne in the front line, the flash away from Hiku, but here come Upset and Norskeren with the Abyssal Voyage, and NIP will realize they have to give up this tower.
Yeah, you see that because NIP were the ones to commit a lot of resources towards topside, Schalke go, okay, this is safe for us to move out of the mid lane. We can actually get this tower now. Oh, Spraddle ults late.
The taunt does land onto Memento, though, and that will stop Memento in his tracks. Schalke able to get the tower. Still only 500 gold between these two teams. Very tense here, Stress. You can sense the gravity of the situation weighing hard on both of these teams. Smitty J, there's a tower there. He spots them out, but here's the Glacial Prison. Smitty has the flash, looking to try and get away. Righteous Glory jumps. Flash, Shook tanking up the tower. Prophet there as well. The Subjugate's being used, and they're trying to shred down Smitty J, but he will eat up the boar and the woman who rides him. Shook gets killed by Smitty J.
Smitty J with the feast damage, making sure he actually gets out of that 2v1 with a kill there. Prophet couldn't chase under the tower because he just took too much damage before. He actually had the inkling that this was coming, so moves to get some vision, spots Prophet and Shook, and from here, the pillar actually kind of nudges Smitty J a little further back towards us, does the Q from Shook, and puts himself in melee range. Smitty J eats him down, and Prophet was tanking the tower for long enough. You can see Smitty J very happy with himself after playing the 1v2 out pretty much perfectly.
The only thing I can notice is that he didn't get a feast stack from it. Could have been better, Stress. Could have been better. Ooh. I want to just come back to Smitty J, though, because in Game 1, he had a stellar performance on the Renekton. He kept, actually, when we got to the later game fights, he was able to isolate Nagne a lot of the time and split up the NIP roster, meaning that they weren't able to get that composition really online. They weren't able to get the parts of the team fight they wanted aligning at the right time.
I was being spoken to by production for a second there. Were we talking about NIP's
I was talking
fighting?
about Smitty J isolating Nagne in the last game and being able to shut them out. He's had a great performance thus far this series.
He has indeed. And that's really that zoning out of Nagne, as you're talking about. Nagne was on the Orianna last time, needed to get the shockwaves through to actually get the cleanup to come through from Hiku, but because Nagne was pushed away from the fight, Shook was generally not allowed in the fight by Smitty J either. That amount of presence is difficult to deal with. And it will still be a similar thing that happens in this game, despite the fact Subjugate will come out from Prophet, will shred through Smitty J's resistances. Like, he's still going to have that feast damage. That doesn't go away. So Nagne, despite being on a tank, Nagne and Hiku still have to be careful of Smitty J almost at all times in fights.
That they do. If you're wondering the reason for the pause, there's a visual issue on screen at the moment. League officials are investigating it, so we'll get it sorted as soon as possible. Norskeren trying to be Snoopy. You're not Snoopy. Get Fit with Norskeren just doesn't have the same ring to it. Get Norwegian with Norskeren, perhaps. I know our scriptwriter would be very happy about that. He keeps telling me the story, Stress, about how Norskeren and Nico the Pico are from the same region of Norway. Wow. And this is a really exciting story that we should be bigging up about the fact that they live about 25 minutes away. And as you can tell, our script writer gets very excited around very minuscule things. He was trying to convince me that Mini Trupax looks like Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, I'm just going to stick on the Norway storyline for now, because I must admit I don't have too much of an insight into the region when it comes to regional clashes between, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, all of that. But certainly, Norskeren would be one of a very few select Norwegian players. I'm trying to cast my mind back and see any other Norwegian players that have made it there. Of course, Norskeren has been around the scene for a little while now.
That he has. Actually played on Mouse Sports with Upset himself and with Caps.
Of course. Nuke Duck.
Yes, Nuke Duck is Norwegian as well. I want to come back to this game, though, just because we're kind of a little bit on the pause hype train here, talking a little bit about some other stuff. We've broken down these compositions a little bit, but I really want to break down exactly when they come online. Because at the moment, we are 20 minutes in. There's only 200 goal between these two teams, and it's incredibly even. Now, Schalke have 2 dragons, but they're clouds. They don't matter that much in terms of who's going to have more damage, who's going to be able to teamfight more effectively. So both teams are in a very similar situation. At what point do we expect NIP to come online? And at what point do we expect Schalke to come online?
So Hikyu is close to his second item. That's kind of the point where NIP will say, okay, let's just look for a skirmish, try and get a numbers advantage and fight that way. So we're actually quite close to that point for them. Upset, because of his staggering farm advantage, is kind of close to his second item too. It's not quite as influential. We're looking a little later on in the game, a few more minutes on top of that for Upset to really be at full power. But we're actually getting close to that boiling point between these two teams where both will start looking for the advantageous skirmishes.
I like myself a boiling point. It's how you make tea.
It is.
Actually, with the majority of teas, and this is my inner Brit coming at my inner Englishman,
you don't want to take it 100
you don't actually want to boil the water.
97.
97 or 80 for some teas, especially if it's a first bush out of Darjeeling.
Yes.
A pale tea, you're looking at 75 to 80.
Otherwise, you burn it and it tastes bad.
It's actually called a first flush. I forgot the... Yes, I am... exploring Darjeeling, exploring teas.
If it's burnt,
you may as well flush it. If you overcook your tea, you are doing things wrong.
Also, if you put the milk in first, wrong.
You should be banned from all social media if you do that. I feel that's the ultimate punishment now. You know, we used to have Exile. Well, Unicorns of Love used to have a mid laner. His name was Exile.
They still do. They didn't get Exile.
It was a joke about how he's not really performing as a mid laner at the moment.
Well, while we're going a little bit crazy, we're still investigating. Well, League officials are still investigating the visual bug reported by Schalke. We're going to head over to the analyst desk for a look at the game so far.
Oh, no. What did I do?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you very much. Yes, while the league officials are looking into that, it is related with some visual problems on Alistair. I have a question for my analysts. What do you think of the draft? We talked a lot about the 80 carries again. We have some time. So, Andre, looking at how this played out, what do you think of the way it finished?
So the way that it finished was, we knew that from the champion pool of both AD carries that there would be an exchange between Twitch and Kog'Maw, but I always felt that the team that had the Kog'Maw would always have the advantage, because by the time that you reach to the AD carry picks, we see Alistar, Sejuani, and Galio on one side, Tahm Kench, Gragas, and Shogat on the other side. So the one that has the best tank killer in terms of AD carry would probably have the advantage. Also, Twitch, in these compositions where we already see that Smitty J is not going to play a split pusher that he usually does, Twitch loses a lot of his stealth power. So he cannot go into a side lane, a one-shot, a split pusher, and then group and try to get some objectives. So I think that Nip made a big mistake by not picking the Kog'Maw there, and we are seeing how well Upset is getting some advantage with it.
Gilius, are these the types of comps and champions you expected to see today?
It really looks like the tank meta has really gone in today. But I totally agree with Jolotto's points. I like Schalke's draft more because they have more overall DPS in their team and more power to kill tanks, especially when this Cassiopeia is going to finish his Liandry's and later on his Void stuff. He's just going to shred through these tanks. Same for Kog'Maw. When he hits his Gunzo power spike, he's just going to shred them all.
Gilius, talk to me about the laning phase. Because this Kog'Maw and on the Schalke side, they had what, plus 30 CS at one point? They froze the lane. How did that happen? A level 11 a bit advantage?
So, yeah, I think this just shows the strength of Upset as a player over Hikyu. He's a superior laner, and he's just showing off today. Like, I mean, they were like under their tower all the time, just chunking the tower, getting a HP lead, CS lead, and then Hikyu did a big mistake. He based when Tahm Kench was able to freeze the wave in front of the tower, so he ended up falling behind one level. Yeah, it's just overall really good play by the bot lane of Schalke.
Second game in a row that Schalke also has a very good early game. You guys have beaten, both of these squads. Is this the level that you expected? Are you seeing the Schalke that you'd expect in the last round of promo?
I mean, I think Schalke yesterday, also a bit because of the way that they drafted, they wanted to get some leads early game. But I felt, especially about Nip, I felt that they can only play early game if Shook has Elise. And seems like Schalke today doesn't want to draft Elise. They don't want to play it. So I think that every single game of the best of fives that Schalke has not Elise, Schalke will have the upper hand. Because overall, the fact that they have 5 Europeans facilitates the communication between Memento and the solo laners.
Yeah.
I think that their bot lane is way better in terms of individual skill. And that's exactly what we are seeing. I mean, when Hikyo decides to go base at level 5 to try to do a roam of mid when Schalke didn't even clear the jungle because he wasn't spotted by a normal ping, by a normal ward. He was spotted by a ping. So Schalke should have been there before, and Hikyo should not roam with Twitch at level 5.
Got it.
And something I wanted to add also. I think Schalke did a great transition from our series to this.
Yeah.
Because they were putting Smitty on these carry tops like Jace, champions that really need you to snowball.
Yeah.
And they are like kind of coin flippy. Like if this Jace does one mistake, the game is over. The tank is going to outscale him. So I like where they went here today with the Cho'Gath top lane, a more scaling pick, a tank in the top lane. Yeah.
I got a follow-up question. If we like what Schalke are doing in the early game, like how they've pivoted from yesterday, what do you think of Ninjas in Pyjamas? Because we've talked about Hiku's decision to back. We've talked about the picks and bans. Second game in a row that little bit disappointed. Maybe question marks around the draft. Let me phrase it that way. What about the in-game decision making, Gilius? What do you think of NIP like as a team? Because it feels like second game in a row, Schalke have just been a little bit better.
Like I don't feel like NIP is like underperforming right now. They're just, I feel on the ADC position at least they are kind of outclassed today. But on the rest of the map, both teams are kind of even. So it's, I don't feel like NIP is making like any.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I've just heard that the players are about ready. Just before we throw over, who will win this game? Just this game?
Schalke.
Schalke?
Yeah, Schalke.
Schalke as well? Okay, you got the prediction on just this
wrong.
game. Let's head over to the casters and see how it ends.
So
Thank you very much, Trevor. Schalke reported a visual bug on Alistair, which was confirmed by league officials. The players are fine continuing with the game, even if the bug keeps occurring. So we're going to get right back on into the action. Stress. We've heard Schalke. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction. I feel it's slightly unfair on you. Personally, I'm going Schalke.
I would just copy their lead. There was a lot of interesting discussion about the bottom lane. So they spoke about how laning advantage actually was 30 CS. As we head back to the game, look at the CS advantage for Upset right now. It is bordering 60 CS at 21 minutes into the game.
There's a reason people call this guy the AD carry superstar. There's a reason that people have bigged him up since spring, since the first Challenger series that we saw him in, since even his time on Mouse Sports. There's a reason that Upset is known as a carry for Schalke 04. And it's because he is just such a strong laner. And he has very few weaknesses in his game, especially when he's got a support like Norskeren who can keep him safe.
And you can see right now, if we toggle onto the gold lead, it accounts for 1,200 gold lead in the 80 carries alone. Like, that is making up the deficit from the tower that NIP have on top of Schalke and the top lane deficit almost. I mean, there's 1,400 gold in favor of Profit, so it is a bit of a swing back and forth. But still, every little helps for Schalke when they start the Baron at 21 minutes. Careful with this, because Smitty J...
Memento's knocked out. Nagne's on his way as well, coming in with the Winds of War, trying to get the taunt up. They have Feast, and they'll get the Baron as well. They don't even need their Kog'Maw to do it. Smitty J's looking for a little bit more, but he's going to be sacrificed as NIP get one kill, but lose the Baron to Schalke 04.
22-minute Baron thanks to the Feast from Smitty J. NIP couldn't close the grip fast enough to get in there and try and steal. They do take Smitty J on the back end of it, which will make this lane matchup a little bit harder. He would have liked to have had the Baron minions there to kind of fight alongside him against Profit and push the lane back out. It's a small deficit now that Smitty J is going to have added to the already difficult matchup. Headbutt from Spraddle tried to get Memento out of the pit. Memento's Gragas, he just body slams back over the wall. Smite sets up Smitty J for the Feast. And then in came the rest of NIP to clean up the Cho'Gath, but still, the rest of Schalke managing to get away. Norskeren couldn't quite get the Devourer over the wall at that point, was trying desperately to save Smitty J, but it wasn't enough.
And just before the pause, Stress, I talked to you about when these, well, just as the pause started, when these compositions come online, what are they waiting for?
Yeah.
Schalke waiting for their first Baron. It would seem they now have an 80% chance of winning this game. That is their record across promos when they get the first Baron of a game. only 2 times out of 10 or 1 out of 5 do they lose from this situation.
That's some good math there.
Thank you. I have to show that I do actually know how to do some math.
Getting down to the lowest common factor at that point. Can't even remember whether that's what it's called, but it doesn't matter. Common denominator, that's it, whatever.
I know words. I might not do the numbers good, but I can do the words. And at the moment, Schalke can do this composition as they're going for the engage, the knockback. Prophet gets knocked into the team. Smitty J on the front line. Here's the hero's entrance. Norskeren has eaten Upset and taken him out of the fight. EQ takes Smitty J down as well with the kill. And Schalke up there actually on the back foot here as Norskeren's caught up. He does have flash and the thick skin, and he uses both to try and get away. Upset on the front line, but Nagne with a 3-man taunt, trying to do what he can to get NIP back, and now Schalke will turn it back around and they say, NIP, that's your engage done. We're not quite done yet. They get one more. The slow on Shook will not be enough. A 1-for-1 trade as Schalke are able to survive for the time being.
A very precarious fight that they're actually going bottom lane with the Abyssal Voyage after to capitalize on. It looked like Upset maybe at one point was caught out, but NIP couldn't get further into the fight. Nagne didn't quite have damage in order to take him out, and that means NIP on the back end of the fight could not create enough space to get everybody out safely. Schalke end up taking the tower from it. Mid tower still stands as Kadril is trying to push the wave out. Schalke continuing to advance their lead.
An incredible team fight between these two teams. If anyone was wondering, the game clients were restarted during the pause, and that removed the visual bug that we had. It went away with that procedure, so these players are playing without any problems with the visuals of the game at all. Let's have another look at this fight, because Hiku goes aggressive.
Yeah, Hiku actually managed to turn from Kadril, otherwise that would have spelled certain death. From there, Hiku is low health, so as much as he's trying to march through the fight, he still has to respect that Upset will kill him if he treads too close. From here, NIP look like they're in a great position as Upset was nearly caught that pillar. Maybe if it had been the other side of the tower remains, it would have been enough to lock Upset in place. He had used his flash at that point in the fight, and now Schalke continue to march forward. That was where the second half of it went, and you can see Upset and Kadril, the 2 carries with the damage in the fights. That's what Schalke need to happen for these fights to go in their favor, and it absolutely did just then.
But we see the tank busting from NIP as well, and Hiku has the flank on Upset here. The hero's entrance, spray and praise used as Schalke North Fear try and get out of this fight. No flashes, of course. Sparrow gets the jump onto Upset. Nagne looking for the flank. Upset caught out. He's stunned up and he's taken down. Smitty J will eat up the enemy AD carry, and it's not a good day or a good year to be an ADC. ADC in 2K17 lull indeed. Schalke North Fear looking for the re-engage on Nagne. He was eaten up. There's too many people eating too many other champions in this game to keep track of. Memento low, Sprattle there in the front line. He's taken down by Smitty J, and now Nagne is caught out in the midst of 4 members of Schalke. He puts the Winds of War down, but that will be the Winds of Demise for him as Kadril, still very much alive, gets the kill.
Oh, and again, the Abyssal Voyage to try and follow up on the fight even further. Kadril looking for more here. Prophet did push up in the lane. I don't think he was actually expecting this. Pillar gets him away from things, but Schalke looking to push onto the top side. And for another fight in this series, Smitty J causing too many problems for NIP. This time it was Hiku just getting destroyed by this Cho'Gath.
And we can see the protection for Upset as well. Norskeren was there as soon as Hiku went for the engage. Memento was body blocking. Smitty J was body blocking. Upset eventually fell, but he still has that 70 farm advantage and is building up towards that 3rd completed item.
So this is about as good a fight as it was going to start for NIP. Look, Upset ends up really shredded by Hiku. Hiku moves through the fight, but delays further damage, which actually extends the fight. Look at where Kadril is. Starts recalling, but as Smitty J kills Twitch, Kadril is called back down to the fight, and it's this extra damage at the end that actually allows Schalke to turn the fight. Smitty J zoning 3 people again in the middle lane as Sprattle peels off the fight, tries to assist the rest of his team. The damage is already done. Kadril has time now to finish off Nagne. It's just a long process of whittling through these tanks. But Schalke, very clean at keeping at least one of their carries alive, and 3,000 damage from Smitty J was enough to just nom through Hiku and part of that fight.
Nagne is still putting the damage down as well, but it's seeming to become a story of 2 hyper carries versus 1 hyper carry here for NIP. You've got a single Twitch against a Cassiopeia and a Kog'Maw who just keep on scaling as we get later on into this game. Schalke appear to have more damage in fights than NIP.
The only damage that they needed in the last fight to turn it back around. Oh, body slam, hang on, that's not
Explosive cask as well as Hiku gets knocked back.
Hiku.
He manages to survive and Spraddle gets the engage, but Upset's still alive here as well. Have to watch those AD carries. Hiku backing out. Smitty J eats down Nagne, and now Shook's caught underneath the tower. Schalke null fear keep on pushing forward as Upset pounds down the damage. Another tower for Schalke. 5 towers to 3, 7 kills to 5, a 6,000 gold lead. And this will be the inhibitors broken for NIP.
NIP struggling in today's series to really undo Schalke, whether it's Kadril and Upset's damage in this game, Smitty J's zoning in both games to enable team fights better. Noskaren has been saving this ultimate for after team fights, and it punishes NIP even more drastically for every lost fight. Now it's the second Baron of the game before 30 minutes. 3 Cloud Drakes plus the Tom Kenchel means Schalke can reposition so quickly.
And we're starting to see them get these second, third, fourth item spikes. You've got Kadril already sitting up there. Memento, this is the sort of engage you want.
Beautiful engage. Hiku just able to flash out and save himself, but he's so low he can't afford to get back in the fight because any stray skill shot or rupture, whatever, hitting Hiku takes him out for certain. And this is as good as Hiku being dead in the fight for Schalke because there is no follow-up damage. Schalke crack through the base, get the inhibitor, get the Baron, now set themselves up for what's potentially a push to put them a game away from being in the LCS.
It's been a long time coming for them, Stress, and NIP, not so long a tenure in the LCS this time. Of course, only joined at the start of Summer Split alongside Mysterious Monkeys, who are now out of the LCS as well. Perhaps short-lived stays for both those two rosters.
And what a roller coaster ride it has been for NIP. Made no changes to their roster during the regular split. People started asking questions when it was MM that their changes seemed to help them. Then later on in the series, adapt their playstyle for NIP throughout the split. They just got better and better, picked up a few key wins against the #1 team in Group A, Fnatic. Lose to Giants, round 1 of the promotion tournament. Destroy Mysterious Monkeys yesterday, and they aren't bringing the fight to Schalke today. Only a couple of things have gone their way. In this game, it has been Profit opening up a lead against Smitty J, but it hasn't mattered because Smitty J has done enough damage on this Cho'Gath that NIP haven't been able to stabilize.
And look at Upset. He's not scared of anything. He shreds through Profit and pushes him back. Smitty J runs in as well with the Righteous Glory. Schalke null fear take their second inhibitor with the Baron still remaining a minute and a half on that. They've got a wave pushing in bot, but they do not even care about the other lanes. They are pushing for the win.
One fight here for NIP to save this for themselves. It's going to take a miraculous ult from Shook and Hiku.
Hiku on the flank. Petrifying gaze was perfect and knocked back. Hero's entrance going to join the fray now, but NIP are falling to the wayside as Schalke get a double with Smitty J. He's looking for more. Schalke want this game too. They want this game
Triple
3. They
kill.
want this series. It's a triple, not quite the quadra for Schalke, but they will be more than satisfied with the win. 2-0 to Schalke null fear.
That was a very convincing carry performance out from Kadril and Upset. Beautiful ultimate from Kadril. Catches Hiku as he unstealths for the fight. Hiku gets blasted into the backline. No chance to survive. And at this point, very little chance for NIP to come back in this series, and a lot of hopes for Schalke of making it into the LCS. 2-0 so far, 1 win away from claiming that spot in the 2018 Spring Split.
At the start of that game, we said it would be a battle of the AD carries. Well, Upset well and truly won that battle. Although he only ended 1-1-6, he did twice as much damage to champions as Hiku did. 29,000 compared to the 14,000 from Hiku. An absolutely monumental advantage for the Schalke laners, and just generally for them as a team. They look like the stronger team when it comes to mechanics, when it comes to team fights, when it comes to laning.
Bit of fast maths again. If it was 29,000 there or thereabouts in a 32-minute game, 900 plus damage per minute for an 80 carry is a large, large number. We'll get it on a stat in game 3 for you, just so that you know the exact figure. But it's not even just about the amount of damage output. It's the route to get there. Dominating the farm game in that bottom lane. Upset just looks great, as do the rest of Schalke.
Schalke are destructive in this series. Let's see what our analysts make of game 2.
Thank you very much, Medic. Yes, we talked a lot about the picks and bans, the draft, the 80 carry matchup. Let's just very quickly summarize how that Cogmore ended up becoming pivotal in the late game. But what led us to that late game? How was it that Schalke were allowed to get such a farmed, such a powerful Cogmore, Andre?
So basically, they drafted a 4-tank composition or 3-tank and a Trundle composition. And they needed... their only win condition was either they can put a Trundle so far ahead that they can actually split push, which is really hard when they have a Memento that played this game so well and has done so good in gauges, or they would actually have absolutely no win condition. They just needed to snowball the tanks because at the end of the day they would have absolutely no damage whatsoever, and they would have absolutely no way to reach to Cogmo. If they can't reach to Cogmo, then Cogmo will do immense amount of damage compared to Twitch, especially of the way that the laning phase went.
Do you know what, Andre? I think we have a replay to show exactly that. Fantastic point. Gilius and Andre, do you want to talk me through how this starts out, of course? Hiku gets jumped on the start, if you guys want to roll a clip.
So in the when the fight starts, you would actually think that Schalke is losing, like soon. You will feel like Schalke is gonna lose this one. And then you can see in the back, Upset is slowly popping off on his Kog'Maw. He's slowly chipping down the tanks. And when his next W is up, he's gonna destroy them all. I think it's now. He's kiting really well to the back.
Is this how you expect team fights to go at this stage with this kind of Kog'Maw?
Yeah, I mean, Upset is playing out of his mind, honestly, in the series. Like, not every ADC can play like that. I mean, carry like that.
There were a couple of more interesting details because Twitch went really low and was knocked back while he was activating the ultimate. So they denied the damage of the ultimate of Twitch completely. And the time that they tried to get to the Kog'Maw with the Galio ultimate, that's why Schalke seemed to be losing the fight, was because Kog'Maw was inside of Tomkench. Once he's left and they have absolutely no more damage to arrive to Kog'Maw, Kog'Maw just killed them all.
I wanted to comment on the draft again. I think there's so much wrong with the draft of NIP. Like, so you're drafting a kind of scaling composition with Twitch, Alistar, Sejuani, but you get outscaled. Like, the draft makes no sense. Like, in this game, if they wanted to win, they had to win the early game. But they have a Sejuani, they have an Alistar. It's a really slow scaling comp. A Twitch Alistar lane is not gonna get you a lead bot lane. Yep. So it also goes back to the drafting. Like, I don't want to like only give props to the Schalke players. They're executing really well, but the veteran is definitely outdrafting Nico today.
I mean, to be honest, why do you even ban Tristana? We already saw Hiku playing Tristana, and we already saw North Caring playing Alistar. So for sure, Alistar is not a priority to NIP, even though he's really good. They know that they'll get it anyway. So why that tunnel vision into the first pick Alistar and banning Tristana?
So is that something you expect now to change, or you hope to change? Like NIP, they're one game away from being knocked out of the EU LCS.
I mean, what I expect is this time they have to ban Tristana. I expect them to choose red side because I think red side is stronger than blue side at the moment. Okay. And I expect them to ban Tristana.
Just before we get to the last predictions for potentially the last game of the promo tournament, I've got one more replay. It actually starts with Upset being killed. And I started panicking a little bit because if Upset dies, I thought Schalke run out of damage. Andre, maybe do you want to start this replay for me and talk me through how both of these 80 carries end up dying, but the fight still plays out?
So this is the only chance that Twitch has against the Kog'Maw, catching it like that. The ultimate of Galio is completely useless here. And since now they caught the Kog'Maw and they put all their tanks into it, that means that Hiku is also alone against the Shogat. By the time that both die, that means that now they have mid lane damage, and the mid lane damage is a Cassio versus a Galio. Cassio just arrived because he started to be a 4v5, and once we see this, once we see Galio trying to fight with the Cassio in terms of damage, we know that the fight's over because Cassio will absolutely take over.
They also have an Abyssal Mask on Cassio's side, which increases the magic damage dealt of all of these members. Like, Gragas has magic damage, Tomkench has magic damage, so...
Shogat as well.
Yeah, they just have no chance there.
So synergy, team comp, it all works. What this does mean, Andre, is your 3-1 prediction for NIP to win is now down the drain. I would like to tell you you are wrong on my guess.
I mean, just like Schalke yesterday, I can't compete with Scott Gillies on prediction.
But Gilius now 2-0 up, seeing NIP, seeing Schalke.
Yeah, I'm changing my prediction to 3-0.
I didn't give you permission to change it. You can't just change it. You
Oh,
locked
sorry,
it in.
okay. All right, never mind.
So you're changing it to 3-0. I mean, I'm looking at side selection. NIP have side selection in the next game.
Red side, I hope.
That's a good thing for them. So that could be like the momentum game. They have side selection. They get to play the side they want.
I want to confirm they've picked red side. So
That's good.
I just heard from
red
production.
side is definitely the strongest side on this patch. So if they can get this win, get some momentum going, tilt Schalke maybe with a stomp, maybe we can see a comeback.
Do you believe in the 10 minutes the team has backstage with Nico on screen, with the players you're looking at, they're going to be able to change between what you just saw to win Game 3?
When I look at the players right now on the camera, they look quite relaxed, quite down, not really motivated. So I don't think that we will see a comeback. But,
I mean,
maybe they prove me wrong.
We don't see him motivated, but we also don't see them mad. So that can mean two things. Either they are not tilted or they just don't care. One thing's good, one thing's bad. But I think that with the amount of people that they brought to help Nico, they can make the changes.
And
but
can I say something?
Yeah.
To NIP generally, the team that wants to win more will always qualify to the LCS.
Yeah.
And NIP went like 0-12 in the regular split. So it doesn't seem like a team that really wants to win. So yeah, we will see.
I know what you mean. It's tough. I'm going to let you change your prediction. I was just giving you some trouble.
Can I change it as well?
No, you're wrong, unfortunately, Andre. Great analysis, guys. Listen, Schalke, they are on the verge of securing a spot in the EU LCS alongside the Giants. Let's see if they can close things out in Game 3 right after the break.
Missy J, no flash, of course, as Shook's going in here.